First, we'd like to start off with candidate interviews for various town boards and commissions. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 this evening, and we are our first person up is Brad Sprang. Hi,
Hello.
come on up, right here.
Bang.
Spang.
Spang.
Okay, so this
No
is
R.
not spelled
No,
correctly.
oh, okay, there's an R in this one, sorry.
That's okay.
We apologize.
Common.
Yeah.
Where is
So Brad, how this works is we have your application here.
Okay.
If there's something additional that you need to tell us,
Okay.
we'll take a minute to do that, that's fine. Otherwise, we just go around the table and each council member will have a question for you,
Okay.
ask you, and that's it.
Sure.
Okay, all
I mean,
right.
I guess I'll open it up and just introduce myself briefly. I'm Brad Spang. I've been a resident of McCandless for about 3 years, and I'm interested in getting involved more in my local community. I think it's an exciting time to be living in McCandless with some of the things I've seen in the McCandless Conversation document. I work in residential home building, so I'm familiar with what development and things like that can bring to the community, which is why I'm most interested in the Planning Commission, with some of the items being vetted to happen in the future for McCandless.
Great.
Hi, Brad. You are currently oversee construction and development activity at Eddie Homes. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep.
Tell us a little bit about that activity, your job, what you have to do.
So right now I'm overseeing 4 communities. Well, 3 with the 4th to come. 1 in Marshall, 2 in Pine, and we have a new community opening in Wexford on 9/10. Basically, I take the job from start to finish. The very beginning would be something along the lines of getting the entrance monument installed, working with vendors to provide like the nameplate for the community, and then breaking ground on each individual house, managing the budget from excavation, footing, foundation, framing, all the way through to final paint and cleaning. I have 1 person who is below me, so I really kick the job off and put all of the structural framework in place and the schedule in place, and then once we get into the finished details, that individual takes over and takes it home with me overseeing it.
Okay, good. Do you ever go before the planning commission yourself?
I don't. Usually my boss, the president.
Okay. And are you familiar with McCandless's zoning code?
Familiar, yes, not in detail, but I know there's different levels of residential,
Right.
commercial, and then some mixed residential commercial, I think.
Yeah.
Mostly on 19, from what I understand.
It's on the website. It's under, if you touch the government, up the top, if you touch government, and then you'll see back in the right-hand corner,
Okay.
it says the ordinances. Okay. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Do you have any ideas of things that you would like to improve, or what you would like to bring to the committee?
I mean, I think there's a number of interesting proposals already in the conversation, so I feel like it'd probably be more vetting those proposals, and not to say there couldn't be an opportunity to bring something, a newer idea, but I think there's already some interesting ideas in there as far as increased transportation, especially with bikes, community center redevelopment on Blazers. So I think there's already some interesting proposals in there to vet. For me, having a young family in there, I think just any way that could bring the community more together in ways, activities, it's already a great place to live with the proximity of the park and so many assets around, so just any way to improve on that. And I think using some of the spaces that are currently underutilized or not living up to their full potential as far as buildings that are just kind of sitting idle or not really helping the streetscape or the economy, things like that.
Thank you.
Mr. Spang, so the Planning Commission is really a very critical advisory group to this council. Can you tell us what you predict will be the top 3 land use issues in McCandless in the future here? In the
Top 3
near and
land
midterm
use?
Issues. As a planning commission member.
Yeah, I mean, I
thinking
think,
about.
yeah, I mean, based on what I'm familiar with, I think some of the rezoning could be an issue. As familiar with the project up on 19, rezoning 4 sheets, and I know there was definitely considerations there between the neighbors, and local government and the commercial enterprise there. So, you know, that's definitely one area that presents items to be worked through, what's best for the local economy and what's best for the immediate residents. I think protecting some green spaces while also increasing, you know, opportunities for development, whether that be residential or commercial. I think there's a balancing act there between green space and what can be used for growth. And I guess maybe a third would just be maybe weaving those things together. How do they relate to each other? How does, I guess a mixed use type space would be what I'm getting at.
Okay. Do you have a particular vision for land development in McCandless in the future?
I would say, when I look at McCandless, I think there's a lot of already established residential neighborhoods that are great. I think when you look at some of the surrounding areas, there's more of an integration between residential and commercial. I think we have that in McCandless Crossing, but I think some of the other neighboring areas, you see a little bit more of that. I think people more so are wanting to go back to a small town feel where they don't have to get another car for everything. Having restaurants that they could walk to, or opportunities to walk from their home to different things without getting in the car. So I guess that would kind of be a vision of mine. How do you merge those? How do you do it safely with streets and walking paths and that sort of thing? I live on Hod Drive, and we're always wishing we could get over to Handle somehow. It's just like right through the woods, but there's no way to get there. It'd be really nice to connect that neighborhood to McCandless Crossing. So I think just things like that.
Good. Hey, thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Do you have any interaction or connection with other developers?
So Eddie Homes, we own and develop our own land, but we outsource the development. So we usually work with Foley Land Development. In my past job with NVR, we did not own our own land or do our own development, so I was exposed and interacted with land developers, Caslick up in Mars. Prior to that, I was working down in the south. I don't recall the names down there.
Okay, well, along that same line, you mentioned where Sheets is going to be built.
Mm-hmm.
What is your idea, or how would you have handled those citizens that were so opposed to Sheets? How would you have handled that?
It's a good question. I guess I would have to take a closer look at the proximity of each of them to the establishment. I can't say I'm deeply familiar with each individual's case. I think it could potentially be different from person to person.
It's a difficult question, I understand.
It's okay.
That's good.
It's a good question. I don't know if I guess off the top of my head, some buffering, lighting. I know all those things come into play when you're putting an establishment like that close to residences. Yeah, I guess off the top of my head, just thinking about things like noise ordinances and lighting and some kind of buffer plannings to try to mitigate the impact on the residents. With a gas station, I understand there's probably also things with controlling any runoff and things of that nature. I think just putting what that looks like comprehensively together and sharing it with those residents just to, I think, establish to them that the town government cares, and though we do want to improve the local economy, we're also sensitive to how it might affect people, and we're not just plopping a gas station down next to your house. We are looking at things to mitigate the impact on you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good answer.
Mr. Spang, I was looking down your resume here, and first of all, are all these organizations related, involved with McCandless Township? Are there other, just picking one out at random, American Eco Outfitters? Just physically, where is that located?
That's located in the south side.
Okay.
It's a international clothing brand with headquarters in the south side. I worked in marketing for 8 years before I moved into construction.
But it's interesting because the work that you did for these other your employers, including Eddie Holmes, your most recent employer, it should be interesting because that's sort of the flip side
Right.
of what we, well, of course, we call it evaluate pros and cons from either side, but you'll certainly be exposed to development not from the developer standpoint,
Right.
but with a lot of input from those that are affected by it,
Right.
including the town.
Yeah.
But what do you see as the biggest difference between those two?
Well, I think in my position in my career now, like you said, I'm on the side of it after everything's been approved, and we're excited to create a home for somebody. We're also excited to turn a profit. I think before that comes into play, I'd be on the side of it where I don't have to think much now about what's best for the immediate area. Someone's already approved that, and I have the green light to go in and build houses. On the planning commission, I'd be tasked with thinking more on the front end of how this development is going to affect the local area, the neighbors, and the local economy and community.
Did you get involved in the water issues in your current position? Or is that, if somebody else does that, and then you're presented with the...
No, I mean, that's kind of all throughout construction. So it's definitely a priority during land development, but also when we get into each individual house, we're always looking at how that individual lot surface water is going to flow, and how we direct it to catch basins and keep it off neighboring properties and controlling the runoff.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Spang.
You're welcome, thank you.
I have no questions.
I have no questions either.
I just want to point out to Brad, Handles is over by Lowe's, right?
Correct.
So you could easily,
He's gonna give you away.
no, yeah, I'll give you a way.
He's gonna give
get
you a
back
way to
there.
walk.
You know the path that runs from Ridgemont to Carson School? Are you familiar with that?
Ridgemont.
Yeah, Ridgemont is sort of at the end of your,
Oh, right.
Yeah,
Ridgemont is right.
right,
I
yeah.
know exactly what it is.
Okay,
I'm
so,
not-
okay. So
I know when you get to the back of Ridgemont, there's like it looks like there's a house back there, and I have no idea how to get to that house. But I've
okay.
never seen a trail back there.
Yeah,
So there's
okay.
a trail from there that goes to Carson.
Carson and then goes over to the library. You work your way over to the library, and then
Okay.
you take, there's a path,
I knew there's a path from-
sidewalk
yeah.
along, what is it, Cumberland?
Cumberland.
And then you can go down there to
Okay.
the back of school. There's actually a path.
It cuts right through the,
Yeah, cuts to Lowe's
Yeah.
parking lot, and then from there it's a straight
Okay.
shot.
good.
So as you're walking, you just take your lunch with you. You'll be
Yeah,
good.
yeah,
We'll have to try it, thank
yeah,
you.
sure.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Joanne?
Thank you.
All right.
Greg, I forgot to ask you, do you want to
Thank you.
recuse yourself from these interviews and voting since you're applying for this
Thank
committee?
you.
Good to meet you.
Thank you.
Oh, I'll see why.
Okay,
Or-
well,
Thank you. Have a good night.
you too. Okay.
Let me look over yours.
Hi.
For some
Hi,
reason
all.
I did that one.
And I'll explain this, and I do the same for everybody.
Okay.
Now, Joanne is applying for the Personnel Board. So,
Gracious person.
so we have your application here. So if you have just something you need to top off, just, you can do that.
I did a letter of introduction. I only did 7. I had no idea how many people were gonna be here.
Okay.
So there's, I think there's only 7 here. Just a little bit about me,
Okay.
and what I've done in the past.
Greg, do you want to get started?
Oh, sure. Joan, the Personnel Board has as its primary duty to solicit and evaluate all applicants for the police force.
Correct.
Except for the chief of police, what specific experience and skills do you have to evaluate applicants?
I have been, currently I'm the property manager at Royal Manor Apartments. I do credit and background evaluations on every tenant that comes into the complex and decide whether they do or do not get to rent. I've been in management all of my life for 40 years. So I have interviewed and evaluated applicants, hundreds of applicants, and interviewed them. So I have had a great deal of experience with evaluating the, whether people are appropriate for the position or appropriate for an apartment.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Is there anything that you would like to bring to this committee or think that we would need?
I've been in McCandless since 2006. Before that, I lived in the Summerhill section of the city and helped to create the Summerhill Citizens Committee. So I've been wanting to get back into government, and this is a small step in that direction.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can you please tell this council about your last experience interviewing and hiring an employee, and maybe describe the techniques that you find most effective to find the right person for the
Sure.
job?
I have hired 2 maintenance technicians this year. I generally will sit down with them, discuss their resume, ask them questions about what they would do in different maintenance situations, whether it's a leak or someone that's heat is out, or water coming through their ceiling, or whatever it is, and I test their responses to what would you do if, and go with it from there. I probably only did like 4 or 5 interviews before I hired the 2 that I did this year, and both are a success.
Following along those lines of using a scenario type of questioning, which is good, what type of scenarios would you contemplate using for a law enforcement officer in the selection of a law enforcement officer?
Well, of course, you have to make sure that they were not criminals.
Background check.
Let's hope not, right?
Okay.
Which is what I do when I do tenants. I always have to check their background check for whether they're, creditworthiness and criminal background check. Theirs would have to be more of a psychological standpoint, I would think, on whether they are psychologically built to handle the situations that they're going to, because they deal with, dead bodies and kids left home alone, and a whole variety of situations which we have at the apartment complex all the time. We had a suicidal tenant last week, and 2 brothers fighting this week, and today I had a gas line break.
Thank you very
It's
much.
been exciting this month.
Okay, I'm good.
I've had a very eventful month so far. It's only halfway gone.
Well, it sounds like you have a lot of experience, but none with police. right?
None with police. I mean, I know a lot of police,
Of
but
course,
I've
yes.
not had any. No, not with hiring or anything like that.
So my question would be, how would you come up with the questions for the police as you're interviewing them?
I'd have to research what your I'm sure the township has certain things they're looking for in police officers. I'm sure I would research that to come up with, we do the actual interviews or we just evaluate them? As kind of a question to you. Does the personnel board actually interview them?
They actually
Okay,
interview.
okay.
yeah. That's
I
why I'm
would-
asking about the questions.
Okay, I would have to research a group of questions and put them into different scenarios along with their previous experience, wherever they came from, whether they were a police officer before or not, to see how they dealt with a situation in their past police history or how they would deal with it now.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Nice to meet you.
Hi.
In working on personnel matters,
Yes,
I've always sort of thought of it as trying to match the capabilities of the person being interviewed with the needs of the organization being represented by a person such as yourself. Is that a fair, very general way of
Sure.
looking at it? Yeah.
sure. You have to make sure that they have what you need. If they don't have what you need, there's no point.
Yeah. And in the,
I mean, you can train them only so far.
yeah. And how would you, how would you expect to prepare yourself to interview, to determine what the needs of the organization are?
I would assume you have basic skills that you would need them to have, whether they have a degree in, what's the degree? Criminal
Criminology
justice.
or criminal justice?
I was coming up with law, I was wrong. Criminal justice, whether you need them to have that, or whether you need years of experience, and see if they have enough to qualify for here.
I see. Well, getting on board with that, I'm sure is not an easy task. I mean,
No.
to get, once you get into the swing of things, I think that's.
Sure,
You can do it. But that's all I have. Thank you very much.
sure,
I have no question.
okay,
I have none either.
okay.
Thank you for interviewing.
Thank you much.
Nice to meet you.
Have a good day. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Jonathan,
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you very much.
It's not important.
Okay.
It's
then.
not
Thank you.
important
Thank
because these
you.
are at large, so.
Yeah.
I get it.
yeah, Jonathan is interviewing for the planning commission, and I know you heard it, but we'll just in sake of fairness, we have your application, if you have anything you'd like to top us off with, that would be fine. Otherwise, we just go around the table and ask you some questions.
Sure.
All right.
So I had applied to both the planning commission and the zoning hearings board. And in response from the manager, I was under the impression that was consideration for the zoning hearing board.
That's not on our paper here, but we can
But
make
I
note
also
of
said,
that.
I also said I was willing to serve in any capacity
No.
that
Is that,
that deemed appropriate.
is the zoning the one you prefer?
Well, hold on, it's your question's coming.
Well, I'm putting it on my resume.
So thank you for telling us that, so we can consider it, so you don't have to come back again.
Okay.
Thank you for telling us that.
What's he interviewing for?
He's planning and zoning,
Okay.
okay, because we just have planning on this paper, so,
His application does include zoning.
yeah.
It does.
Okay, Fred?
You're an attorney with experience with the energy companies, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Are you in-house attorney now, or
Yes.
you
yeah.
did work for some of us at firms?
Yes, some of the firms.
Do you have any experience with our zoning ordinance?
Not so much directly with the township, but I've read the ordinances, and I think part 13 of the ordinance that deals with zoning. I work with townships, municipalities, counties in my current role with Emerson. I have extensive experience in the oil and gas energy, real estate into reviewing D-plots, subdivision plans. I use the D-plotting software. I was actually a carpenter's apprentice out of high school. And then I was also a freight train conductor after that, so I had kind of a journey before I started law school, and I was drove a tractor trailer after I was I was a freight train conductor, and then September 11th happened. I was laid off, and so I started driving a tractor trailer. I worked for a UPS subsidiary, Papa John's Pizza. So I would drive regional, and then I would go to school on the off days, and then I was in the evening program at Duquesne University.
Oh, that's why I went through. It's a good school.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Well, you've done a lot. So I guess, what is it that you think that you could bring to this committee? Any improvements or ideas that you'd like to see?
Well, I think as far as a planning scenario, I think McCandless has a great mixture of residential and commercial businesses. I would like to see that balance maintained. Of course, I think there's always going to be modifications and adjustments as time and the economy necessitate. But I think if we can retain that suburb charm that we all love to live in and chose to live here. I know growing up driving down McKnight Road, my dad always referred to it as McNightmare Road because of all the traffic lights and traffic, and I know that's a strong and important part of the town too, but you don't want to become just overdeveloped and you kind of lose that sense of community.
Thank you.
Mr. Hall, let me ask this question, let me broaden it so that it covers both the zoning and the planning that you're interested in, and that would be, can you explain to this council what you would predict will be the top 3 planning zoning issues in McCandless here in the coming years?
Well, certainly, I think as Brad mentioned it before, I think a rezoning as commercial opportunities develop. I know there's some senior assistant living facilities that are under construction now by McCandless Crossing. I think as some of the smaller places are going out of business, like Boston Market, some other things may take its place. So I think a rezoning, and also we're living in a time where there's economic growth and new facilities and things that support that will need to come in as well. And then I think also new residential plans will also be proposed and be developed as well.
Do you have a vision for land use looking forward for the town?
Well, I think it's good that land be used. So I guess in just what manner and from a practical standpoint, how it's used and how it's developed, so it does be of a great benefit to all of the residents, and kind of maintaining that harmony and the balance between commercial and residential.
Okay. Can I ask how long you've lived in the town?
Since 2012.
Okay. I too have heard the term McNightmare Road. Typically that's been referred to the southern portion of McKnight Road and not that which is in McCandless.
Which is Ross Township.
Yeah.
It's defensive.
And we've seen McCandless crossings and things progressing north because
It is.
God only made so much land, right? He's not making any more of it.
Yes.
So as we grow, our businesses grow as well.
Thank you very much.
It's only the people that haven't lived in the South Hills that call it that. It's much worse.
Nothing like putting you on the spot.
Yeah, that's right.
You've told us the things that you think would be coming in to McCandless. But what would be your wish that you would like to see in McCandless that you're not seeing here yet?
That's kind of a hard question on the spot too. So,
Thank you.
I know we have a great park, North Park. I go there all the time with my 5-year-old. We go kayaking all the time there and fishing. And I'd like to maybe see more parks that have some, maybe some more hiking trails and some things to do, and maybe some other places for the community, so they can have parties and get together as well. So
Okay.
I know North Park's great, but if we can have
I
other
understand.
areas like that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hall, as we've already mentioned, you have 2 positions, you've applied essentially for 2 positions. You have a pretty extensive, aside from your law degree, you've got a pretty varied legal experience. Which of the 2 positions do you feel like you're better qualified for, if you can answer that question?
It's hard to say. I know that you have, at least from my observation, you have some well-qualified candidates for both, and maybe that have more experience in the planning and commissioning. I can come from that perspective from my construction law class, my experience as a carpenter, and my research through court records and map plaps and mapping planning offices in my research. From a zoning board, I had the Cali Award for PA Civil Procedure, and also I think my judgment. So it's not just simply applying the law, it's judging and coming to a balance between the rational basis of the township for the purpose of the zoning ordinance versus the individual's use and enjoyment of the property. So I think I might be a little stronger in there, but again, I was inspired to serve by my daughter, who started out as a junior firefighter at People's Fire Department, became a firefighter, now she's in the Air Force serving. So I was just inspired to serve, and I wanted to put my experience and qualifications out there for your use, and however if deemed worthy to do so, I would be happy to serve
Well,
in any capacity.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your answers.
Thank you.
Any questions from me?
That nice writing experience gives you a good opportunity to consider problems from different angles. I like that a lot.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you
We
for your time.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Joseph?
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Congratulations on your
Just so you know, he was in Ward 7.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Is he here?
Jonathan Hall, he's in Ward 7.
Oh, is he?
Is he
Yeah,
in here?
that's not my
Throw
word.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't find where.
Yeah, I just wanna let you know.
Thank you.
He's not here.
Joseph's not here?
Yeah, he was.
Jason is also not here? Anyone out in the hall?
We're a little
Yeah.
ahead. We're ahead.
Can we pause?
7:15,
For break?
10 minutes early.
I appreciate
it. Yeah.
You better than my doctor.
Hi, Jason. We do this the same way as when you interviewed before. We have your application here, so if you have anything that you want to add, feel free to do that. Otherwise, we just go around the table and everybody just asks a question.
No, I enjoyed my time on the board last year. I felt like, I look back and I didn't feel like I made like a huge, one big vital contribution, but I felt there was a lot of little things along the way, which,
Right,
a lot of little things add up to a big thing, I guess.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
you did make a lot of contributions, and that was good. But you're currently employed with a new construction builder. Do you foresee any problems in making the meetings at all?
No. I think,
right.
out of the last time, there was one meeting I missed out of
Yeah.
last year, so that,
That's
yeah.
great.
Yeah, they had me, I was actually down in Tampa, Florida. But,
Okay.
Most of the time, I shouldn't have a problem with it unless
Okay,
they
great.
schedule me for a business trip.
Yeah, and you have some experience in teaching in a master's program at Duquesne University?
Yep.
How was that?
I enjoyed doing that. I was an adjunct professor down there. I taught real estate fundamentals, and they did like a double dip course with it. So it counted towards your MBA, but it also counted, like, if the kids wanted to go and like get a real estate license,
Right.
they could double dip on it. I guess their enrollment numbers went down, and since it was like a night class,
Mhm.
they had a full-time guy doing it during the day and then me doing it at night.
Mhm.
And I guess if enrollment gets cut, they cut the adjuncts and
Right, yeah.
you know, give it to
yeah,
the full-time
right.
people. But yeah,
Yeah,
so I haven't done it in a couple years, but you know, if they had enrollment went up and had a opening again, I would do it again in a heartbeat, because it was actually kind of fun, you know?
and you're getting more familiar with the land use ordinances for,
Yeah.
for McCandless?
Yep, yep.
Okay.
And I'm, you know, going along with that too, I'm actually doing some renovations at my own house, you know, additions and
Mhm.
building a garage, so I've been through all that with Bruce and Jeff and seeing how
Yeah,
permitting and stuff works, you know, even first-handed, so yeah.
okay, okay, thanks, Jason.
Okay.
I don't have any questions.
Mr. Moots,
Mhm.
could you tell us what you predict will be the top 3 land use issues in McCandless in the coming future here?
I mean, I don't know if it's probably McCandless, but I see a lot of mixed-use stuff coming in the pipeline just across the whole board in the city, where there's probably gonna be people looking to do maybe like a retail thing on like a first floor, apartments above it, or, you know, a little bit like, more like McCandless Crossing, where there's townhomes, single family mixed with businesses, so, you know, I don't know if anybody's planning that in McCandless again, but I could definitely see that as a top issue. You know, I attended the strategic plan, you know, meetings. I could see renovations along 19 and probably like the old Ingomar town being hot button issues, you know, coming up, like to redevelop some of that. Number 3, we're always adding housing. Housing is a low, or in a high demand right now, so I could see a lot of maybe not large tracts of land in McCandless where you'd have like a Ryan or a Miranda come in and do like a huge 100-house blowout, but I could see a lot more of like the little builders, you know, the custom home builders, where they're gonna take a 4 or 5 acre parcel, you know, put 3, 4, 5 houses on it. I could see a lot of that coming in too.
Can you tell me what your toughest vote was sitting on the planning commission for us now?
The toughest, well, I recused myself from the sheet stuff, so I mean, that obviously would have been a no-brainer. Like I said, I didn't really have, a lot of the stuff that came across my plate, you know, I was in favor for, you know, to do, so I kind of like, you know, was on board for a lot of it. I had a couple things that like I brought up to certain developers, you know, that I would have liked, you know, and I think that they did take our suggestions as approved. So like the townhome project going in off of Ingomar, that was one, and I caught it where they had the mailboxes on one side of the street and a sidewalk on both sides, but it didn't connect at the cul-de-sac. So I was kind of one of the people that, like, I was the one that caught it and said, well, if you have a disabled person, they've got to get from A to B to get to their mailboxes. We really should require, like, sidewalks all the way around. The other one I brought up, too, was with the Chase Bank going in by the AGH Micro Hospital. They had, like, 2 handicap parking spots. And I'm like, the old people are the people that go to the bank all the time, and you're putting it next to the hospital. I really think you should have more than 2 handicap parking spots, you know. So like I said, it wasn't one tough decision, it was a bunch of little ones, you know.
Oh, thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Jason, if you had a wish list, what would you wish for McCandless?
As far as what we would like to bring in, as far as
Yes.
what we, okay. I mean, I'm always in favor of more stuff that the public could use versus bringing in outsiders. So I would be more in favor of like townhomes, single-family house communities, stuff like a McCandless Crossing where you have local coffee shops, restaurants, things like that. You know, I'd like to see, you know, maybe McCandless get after people that maybe don't maintain some of these older properties. You know, really maybe get after them a little bit more to maintain it versus, you know, just throwing up our hands and letting it get to a certain point and okay, tear it down. Because there are some nice old buildings around here, you know, so.
Thank you.
Jason, it's good to see you again. The one thing that, I don't have any additional questions on this, but I thought it was interesting. You're the chairman of the Ascension Academy?
I used to be,
Oh.
yeah, not they had like I served there for about 7 years and I hit my term limit.
Oh, I see.
So, yeah, I have not been the chairman for about 2 years or
It
so
must have been
there.
an interesting job, I would think.
Yeah, yeah, it was, I was a student there, in high school, I was one of the, like, if you look at my senior yearbook, it was about 120 pages, and I was probably on like 75 of those pages, you know, like, get involved in person.
That's how you got their attention,
Yeah, and
years later.
yeah, the principal was still the principal when I was there, and she asked me if I would come back and serve and help, and I did.
Did you, I know you have looked at some of the ordinances for the
Mhm.
various things,
A lot of
including
them, yep.
those related to the sheets, but have you taken a good look at our global picture of the ordinances?
Yeah, Bruce?
Do you think I mean, beyond just, but do you think they need some work?
Yeah, and, you know, not putting me on the spot, I don't recall a certain section that really
No, I
needs
don't, I wasn't looking
updated.
for that, I just meant in general.
Yeah, but I mean, there are certain things, you know, like when we were talking about the mixed-use development with, you know, down here on Blazer Drive, you know, it made sense to add, you know, our current thing has nothing for like personal, or like the personal care home type facility that they wanted to do. So I think it should be an organic thing. There's
Yeah.
things that exist now that didn't exist 10 years ago, you know, so I think, you know, yes, we should probably always keep looking at it and, you know, reviewing it and updating it, you know. And I know even like on my end, there's a lot of green building technology. There's a lot of, you know, newer ways of doing things that might also affect some of our current ordinances, you know, just things, products, LED lighting, things like that that weren't available when the original code was written too, so.
Well, Jason, thank you very much. And
All right.
thanks for serving before and being willing to do it again.
No problem.
No questions from me?
I have no question either. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Jason?
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in, Jason.
Thank you.
Good seeing you, Jason.
Thank you, Steve. Good seeing you.
Yep.
Okay, the other fellow's not gonna be there as soon as.
Okay, let's continue on with the review of the tentative business meeting agenda. The only thing I really saw is to add the nominations. There are 2 positions for personnel, and we have interviewed everyone, so can we add those?
No, we haven't interviewed everybody.
There's a couple that
Oh, I thought we only.
Lucas was not able to attend
Tonight.
because of, he got called into work. So I guess my question would become, do you want us to try to reschedule? I mean, he was beyond his control.
Give him an extra chance.
So you wanna put this off another month then?
Yeah. Or we could, if need be, we can continue the meeting on the 28th.
And you're talking about interviewing on the
Well,
business meeting, is that what you're saying?
Well, my recommendation would be to be able to keep these going,
Yeah.
that we actually schedule interviews for next Monday night.
That's a good idea, since it seems like we have time, we can put it in.
Yeah,
So that way we're moving along.
yes.
Yeah, give him another chance.
Okay.
So you want to 6:30 then and do more interviews? Is everyone okay with that?
Do we need 6:30? What is it,
Yeah,
2?
we have enough.
We
Is that
have,
enough?
we
Okay.
have a
We have-
ton
All right,
of,
all right.
we have like 26 people, I think.
All right, 6:30 it is, yay.
Okay, 6:30 for interviews.
Okay.
And do you know if he's gonna be able to make that meeting? I mean,
Well,
how-
I'll confirm. But we have other ones to bring in.
Alright, that's done. Anyone else have any additions that need to be made for the business meeting? Okay, liaison, reports. Greg, anything you need to add to, the planning commission notes?
Well, there's no meeting in October for the planning commission. The meeting in November is going to be a simple subdivision of what is now a C6 area. It's up the Corporate Drive, and where actually we had medical marijuana building going to be contemplated being put, but Corporate Drive consists of, they're going to take a simple subdivision of one lot, and the lot is approximately 9.9, approximately 10 acres, and create two lots, one 6.1 acre and one 3.8 acres. And again, that's on the Corporate Drive off of McKnight Road, right near Perrymont. And the second is to approve a land development plan for McCandless KinderCare, and it'll be a daycare center, and let's see what else.
Where would that be?
A daycare center.
Where would it be?
It's right as you're going from Perrymont, down on McKnight Road.
Mm-hmm.
And you go across to McKnight Road, I mean, not McKnight Road, but across on Babcock.
Okay.
And, Corporate Drive
Right,
is up there.
that's where up where
Yeah.
TGI Fridays. was.
Yeah, but it's on the other side of it's on the other side of next, of where Fridays was.
Oh, okay.
So that lot,
yeah,
that
there.
blank, that empty lot that's always been there. Yeah,
Thank you.
sure. And also then we're going to discuss the chickens, ducks, bees, and dogs ordinance. For that, the planning commission is going to discuss that.
And that's for next month.
Yeah, that's it.
Zoning hearing board?
Zoning hearing board, it had three cases, but the main was an applicant was granted a 2-foot height variance for a solar panels in order to have solar panels on his roof on a detached building. The detached building was within 100 feet from the property line, and they're in an R2 district, and therefore it had to be 15 feet, and he needed a variance for the 2 feet to have it 17 feet. In October, there's two cases. On October 23rd, which is a Wednesday, there's two cases involving residential property, both with setback requests. So,
McCandless Sanitary Authority.
I provided the minutes from the October business meeting. Since then, we met on October 17th. I had three quick updates for council. Referencing those minutes, the authority has received the right-of-way agreement requested from Allegheny County for the plant conversion work. The Stonebrook stabilization project has been completed, but in kind of in conjunction with that work, it was noted that the town has a stormwater outfall issue there coming off of Passenger Lane that they would like us to take note of, and that was related to that erosion problem and stormwater. And our next meeting will be November 6th. That concludes my report.
Ambulance Authority?
Ambulance Authority, I provided the board agenda, and the only thing to note there for the council is that the expenses did exceed revenues by $68,000 for the first quarter of this year. And I'll note that the authority has budgeted an annualized loss for 2019-2020 year of $246,000. That concludes my report there.
Library.
I'm asking maybe that we could come back to this because Amy Steele
They're
was supposed to come in to present us with the library budget and answer any questions, so could we come back to that one?
We can come back, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Council of Governments.
Getting close on the cable contracts. They mentioned nobody's ordered their salt yet for the coming year. Did quite a bit of talking on these new small towers that they're putting up. Apparently they've got one. I missed it. I looked for it but couldn't find it in Shaler. They said it looks like a refrigerator mounted to a telephone pole. That's basically about it.
Full-size refrigerator?
So that's what they said.
Where
I
is
didn't see it.
Where is it
They s-
located?
They said it says you come out of the Shaler Municipal Building and start heading up the hill. And I looked and didn't, I mean, it was 9 o'clock at night by the time I left the meeting.
Okay.
But I kinda would've expected to be able to see a
That big.
refrigerator mounted to a telephone pole. I did not see it, and I did not turn around to check a second time.
Seems big.
Yeah.
Seems big for.
But that's the measurements he gave us at the conference. Remember, because I said it seemed like the size of a hot water heater tank?
Yeah,
It was
they-
pretty big.
They said it looked like a refrigerator mounted to a telephone pole.
The bottom part is supposed to be big, but the part that's on the pole is not supposed to be that big. But it has a bottom, remember, that was pushed up against houses, it was a much bigger, but the thing on the pole is not that big.
Maybe this one, they put the bottom part on top for some
Well,
reason.
that would have been very unfortunate.
They did say that they're trying to keep them in, or push towards places like town hall and stuff to keep them out of the community area, that just put these towers on town sites. I thought that sounded like a bad idea,
I was
but
gonna say, does anyone want it on town hall property?
they seem to think the biggest one is the people don't want them near schools.
But you're such a limited, area where they're useful that you just can't limit them necessarily to town property.
No, they didn't say that they should limit them to town property. They said they should offer the town properties first so that it doesn't end up in other people's,
Front,
you know, and then obviously if there's a hole somewhere down over there that we don't own, then I imagine like Sloop Road is a bad one.
Where are we on ordinance on this?
We have the draft that we're reviewing, with, Gavin's office. And honestly, I mean, it looks good. I think the only thing that I really wanna go back and look at is co-location. That was a concept that came out of that conference that I liked, looking at location of facilities, tying into streetlights, traffic signals and things like
Right.
that.
That's what they talked about. at the
Try to
conference.
limit the negative impact.
Right.
Keep them on things that are already there.
Yes.
May I add, I spoke to one of the presenters at the conference and with concerns, particularly for neighborhoods that have underground utilities where a pole structure would really be intrusive. And they suggested that, at least the person I spoke to suggested, if there was a pathway provided to provide an alternative structure to mount on, such as a home or another building in the neighborhood, to avoid the pole structure, that may be a way to get around needing to build structures in neighborhoods with underground utilities. But in order to meet the requirements of the state, there would have to be a pathway provided for them for an alternative. And then the polling could be a last resort. So I offer that as you have discussions about the
You
ordinance.
say a pathway, for example, in my neighborhood, Villa, all the villas up there, it's all underground utilities.
Correct.
But they contemplate the possibility of putting up like a telephone pole type structure and just locking this thing onto that.
Or you could offer your attic.
Let them attach it to your house.
I don't think I'd like that, actually, I'll tell you the truth. It seems to me that's, but is there an alternative, or is it?
I just described.
Yeah, I didn't quite get exactly what your alternative was.
Well, perhaps within somebody's, that perhaps if the zoning provided for them to negotiate with residents to place it within an unfinished attic space or on the back of a garage or someplace, as long as they have the ability, we cannot stop them from undertaking this commerce, is my understanding. And so the difficulty is then minimizing, again, the impact to our residents and still meet their business requirements. And one way to meet that would be have a pathway that they could install this maybe outside of the right-of-way within the confines of our ordinance.
When you're saying a pathway, what does that mean?
An alternative to putting up the pole. We can't say you can't put up a pole if there's no other option.
If they have an area that doesn't have the coverage, they have the ability to put the pole up.
And when I
Or
asked
put a contraption in a tower.
And I asked about ground-mounted units, obviously, and currently there's no technology available that would support what they're doing with a ground-mounted unit. So we need to find some other solution in the interim.
A ground unit, Bill, would be something like a transformer that
In
you
my
see
mind, it would be like a pad-mounted transformer, yes.
We don't want to stand in the way of progress, certainly.
Thank you. Just let me share that.
Joint Rec Board.
Oh, there's last meetings for those are, May. None to be had.
MIDA.
We haven't had any meetings in the recent past. I did receive and review the financial statement that was, I think it was issued October 4th, or I got it October 14th. But there's no communication subsequent to that. The typical, what I do with bank statements is we initial the bank statements as a control that was somewhere along the way was suggested to us signing the outside of the envelope and then having me open it up and then initial and date what the contents so that they have a chain of custody, I guess is what they're trying to do.
Anything else?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Volunteer Firefighter Steering Committee.
No new meeting.
North Pittsburgh Community Development Corporation.
Nothing. There's just absolutely no, I don't know, in my memory, that there's ever been any action on an entity. It does exist, but nothing's ever happened.
The North Allegheny Heritage Center, Finance, Development, Commercial.
The minutes are in your packet, but I would like to add to that the Notorious North Hills was held last Thursday it was, and they were absolutely delighted with the response they got. When they started to do this, our hope was that we would get 30 people to come, and they actually had to close it at 75 because that's all the place would hold. And they ended up making $1,900 for the Heritage, so which is great. And because they got such a tremendous response, they're considering having another one next month.
I've heard nothing but wonderful things about it.
Right.
People just came up and said that they were there and they really thought they were so surprised at how interesting the
Right.
North Hills really is.
And there was a lot of socializing before the actual program and again after the program. So it was nice for the citizens to be able to just visit with each other also. So the whole thing was a huge success.
I endorse that. Pat and I attended this, and it was really a excellent presentation. Very interesting.
Good.
And all starting with Mrs. Sofel, the famous story of the Biddles and all that. But there's a lot of things we didn't even know about. A lot of buildings I remember that aren't here anymore. So I hope they can. Who wrote that? Do you know who actually wrote the stage for the play, so to speak?
I do not.
Diane and, I can't think of his name. The people that presented.
The presenters.
Diane Ellis.
They wrote it.
Really was good.
Yeah.
Very good.
It was
She's
completely
very good at
local,
that kind of thing.
production.
So that's why they decided to have it a second time.
Yeah.
So, which I think
And
would
I
be.
think, well, I knew that there were at least 15 people on a waiting list.
Well, by
They
word of
offered
mouth,
it,
since
yes.
it was so good, I'm sure that we'll get
they're gonna put the same production on again, or is it something?
Not,
new?
no, something else,
Okay.
yeah,
And
okay.
thank you to Tucker Aaronsburg for helping sponsor it.
That concludes my report.
Community Day Committee?
No new meeting.
I'd just
Give us
like
a
to,
report.
I'd just
yeah.
like to add that we had a concluding, excuse me, meeting, and everyone seemed very, very pleased with the way Community Day turned out. You know, there were a few little suggestions, but nothing major. I didn't think there was anything that was major, other than the fact that we're going to get some new, those banners, you know, that go across the road. When we originally bought them, we thought it would be great if they lasted 3 years, and these have lasted, I think, 15. So we got our money's worth out of them.
Awesome.
So, I'm sorry, I didn't mean
No, you're
to,
fine.
but I was at that meeting, so.
EAC, cleanup day was Saturday. We had almost 80 people show up. It was another great success. This was more people than we've had before. We picked up 140 bags of roadside litter. So also another record. So I appreciate all the citizens that got out there and worked hard to please, the bags on the side of the road that you saw, that's all that everyone picked up. So I really appreciate them. Enjoy those roadsides, nice and clean. And also you'll see on the newly paved streets from this year, you're gonna see little round drain vinyl stickers that we put on there that reminds people not to dump down the storm drains. It's a Clean Water Initiative. So if you see those on your newly paved roads, that's what that's about. Personnel Board.
The notes are posted. The board is looking to start testing in January, and I know we're gonna try to have another meeting coming up in the next month or so, let's say. So, that's pretty much
Okay.
it.
Technology Committee.
Technology Committee met on October 2nd at 6:30. The notes will be distributed. I apologize for the lateness. Basically, in short strokes, the RFP process for IT services is in full swing with the Technology Committee. They're doing great work. They've broken into work groups to take their specialties and apply it to that process. They're also focusing on some immediate impacts with low-hanging fruit, things like the need to upgrade to Windows 10 as Windows 7 goes out of service at the end of the year, and also some other low-hanging fruit like remote access and things like that to help the efficiency of the town with their operations. Our next meeting will be Wednesday, November 6th. I think they're also assisting with somewhat with an IT budget
Yes.
input for our manager. That concludes my report.
Junior Council Member report.
So after last week, when you guys talked about dogs again, I decided to weigh in on that. And I looked at a few other towns' ordinances on dogs and pets. And Franklin Park, it wasn't on pets in particular, but it was on livestock animals. And there was something called an animal unit. And so what an animal unit is that the ordinance effectively said that animals would be limited based on two things. It was property size and about how big the animal was. So for every acre over 5 acres, a person would be granted an additional animal unit. And so there was large animals, which was like cows, llamas, and that was one animal unit. But then there was smaller things like cattle and, not cattle, like pigs and, I forget what it was, pigs and sheep that were half a credit. And then ducks and rabbits and chickens were all considered 1/10 of a unit. And so I deduced that if McCandless implemented something similar to domestic pets, that could be a solution to the problem of how many pets people could own. So everyone gets, let's say, 5 animal credits, and then if they own 5 big dogs, that would count as their 5 animal credits, but a fish would only count as 1/10 of one. And then once they reach those 5 credits, then they would have to get a special permit for each individual animal after that, or each individual credit, and possibly be mandated to be like a veterinarian to come in like once a year to make sure all their pets are properly maintained and cared for. And then this would allow people to have as many pets as they want as long as they're caring for them properly.
Very interesting.
More input to the planning commission.
And this was called a, you said they were animal
units.
They were animal units.
That's
And-
what-
And how did they, and so if you got a permit for additional animal units, was there inspections that were associated with that, or
So-
how was this monitored?
So Franklin Park didn't monitor it. They didn't have a system to allow people to have more animals past the animal units. I kind of just like added that as my own idea onto their ordinance as something that we could possibly do.
Okay.
Thank you for doing the research.
Mike, did your research reveal, and our ordinance may spell this out, but are we, how much land does a person have to house a horse there? A horse?
So a horse was considered a large animal, and it was anywhere between 5 to 7 acres. You got 5 animal credits. So then a horse would count as 1 animal credit. So you could have 5 horses within 5 acres. And then past that, it went up by like 1 or like half, or sometimes 2 every like few or so acres.
Is that the situation in McCandless now, that you can have 5 horses on 5 acres?
I'm not sure about McCandless.
No, thanks.
We have a minimum property size for horses and cows and things like that.
Do you know offhand what it is?
I wanna say it's 5
10
acres.
5 or 10 or something.
I think it's 5 to have for 1 horse. And 10, they just start getting into farm or something.
So did they also have any, way to manage violations?
They didn't say for violations. They did say that like if a horse was caught like off the property and defecating on someone else's property, or just on someone else's property, that it'd be confiscated, and I think it was a $500 fine if it was caught escaping.
Okay. But for having outside of your pet units, what did they do to those violators? How did they enforce that?
I don't think I don't know if there was an enforcement method that I saw on the document. I can check that out.
I actually had a call about someone, because of our new ordinance, threatening somebody else for walking their dog because it pooped on when it walked. And the way that ordinance reads still reads to me like if it poops, whether you clean it up or not, it's too late. Well, I don't think it's gone to the police yet, but it's been a threat for it.
Anything else?
No, that's it.
Well, I have a question. If you have 5 horses on 5 acres, can you not have any dogs or fish? Because you used up your credits.
Their ordinance only pertained to livestock and larger animals. It said does not include domestic pets. So I was kind of adapting their livestock ordinance to a domestic pet one.
Can I hit the play button?
No.
I got 1984
No.
George Orwell trailer
Don't
movie.
do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I always like hearing your insights.
Thank you. Nice research. Thank you.
Thank you. Report and correspondence, I have several things going on, but nothing ready to be reported on yet. Town manager's report.
You all received a copy of my report in your folder for the weekend. I just wanted to follow up, highlight a couple of items. One is that, speaking of Franklin Park again, we have received that letter from Franklin Park inquiring regarding a joint zoning amendment for oil and gas regulation, and that's prompting review of our current ordinances, but wanted to check to see if the council wanted me to respond in any way at this time to Franklin Park with their inquiry.
Inquiry.
Whether we would entertain any kind of a joint zoning.
No, I see, yeah.
See why we
Could we?
couldn't entertain it.
Yeah, can we suggest like a meeting where we can all sit down and talk about that?
I would suggest we do our homework
be very
first.
careful.
They've done theirs. I'm not,
Because of how many people.
No, yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
Members.
I am, I
Three and
think we should
three.
do our homework on the zoning first. I gave several suggestions to the manager on that.
Mhm.
And, they've done their homework, and I don't like to sit at the table when they've done theirs and we haven't done ours. And
I do think we need a response to them. They sent that letter quite a
Right.
while ago. But I think telling them that we are currently looking at our zoning, and once we have a little more decided what we're doing,
Some information.
that we can,
Information.
yeah, once we've decided what we're doing, then we can talk to them.
Okay.
But that we are
When we get
open
back-
to
we'll get
that
back to them.
possible idea in the future. We're not ruling
Okay.
that out, but we have to get our house in order first.
Right.
Okay. We have received, inquiries from Keystone Collections regarding EIT collections, or EIT credits for, volunteer firefighters. And, I believe I discussed this previously, but just wanted to make sure that, currently our ordinance allows for the volunteer service credit to volunteers who serve in the 3 fire companies that are within the town. The question was whether or not we wanted to offer that credit to a resident of the town who served in one of the outside fire departments, or fire companies that might be a mutual aid company. And in looking at other communities, Shaler does offer it to whoever. Ross is similar to Shaler.
Mhm.
Cranberry only offers to firefighters within their
Yeah.
communities. Franklin Park doesn't offer one at this point. So that's,
So reciprocity,
yeah, there's some reciprocity, there's some
Yeah.
that isn't.
I mean, I think reciprocity is good. I mean,
I think,
So what do we do,
The
how do we
purp-
do that? If he lives in a different town?
No, if
No, he
they
lives
live
in-
here.
They live
but
here,
they're
but they-
here.
they serve
but
as-
is a
Oh,
firefighter,
okay.
and they would need to follow the same criteria.
Because I thought the whole reason we did this was to try to encourage people to join
Yes.
our fire department.
Right.
Yes, and that's,
And we
That-
talked about this before, I
Yes.
thought.
Right,
We did.
yes, we
Okay,
And
did.
if-
and what did we decide when we talked about
I
it
think the
before?
last discussion that I can recall is that we wanted to promote volunteerism within the 3 departments that serve the
Right.
town.
Right.
Well, I mean,
I just needed to get back to Keystone with an up or a down in terms of whether we were gonna make any changes. If the council feels that the current policy is a good one, then we'll act accordingly.
well, I mean, I would tend to grant them reciprocity.
What do you mean by
With who?
Ross? Look, in your report, Sheeler provides a credit regardless of where the
Yeah.
fireman serves.
Correct.
So
Right.
if somebody
And
serves in
Ross does the
McCandless, they
same
live in,
thing.
and the Ross is the other side of the coin.
Well, Ross does the same thing as Shaler. I
Yes.
just found that out today.
Oh, they do?
But
But the
but
report says.
Cranberry.
But Cranberry
Franklin
doesn't.
Park
Cranberry
Okay.
And Franklin Park doesn't offer one at this time.
Why would someone do that? Why would they live in McCandless and serve in another
I
Sometimes
municipality?
it's-
believe we actually heard this story, and the person used to live in the other township and stayed with their
Stayed with them.
Yeah.
department
Okay.
when they,
So
yeah.
there's any number of reasons. It's what Steve just
I
mentioned.
think we actually heard that.
There can just be a chemistry.
His, uncle works
Yeah,
there or
it gets
something.
there,
yeah.
right, okay.
And maybe you grew up in that community and serving that fire department and just stayed with them. I mean,
Like a family tradition.
I mean, I will add to this that we discussed this, Carolyn was
With
there
the
with us
st-
at
yeah.
the steering committee, and frankly, the comments from the leadership of our departments was mixed. There was agreement that that there were residents, in fact, in other municipalities that served on our fire departments, as well as residents here that served on others, for some of the reasons that Steve listed, I think, in part. I think all agreed there wasn't enough information to make a good decision at that time. There were questions of reciprocity, there were questions of eligibility. And then there were situations where there were individuals who were actually serving in both departments, and would they be getting granted doubles? So I think I'd like to take this back to the steering committee with Carolyn and talk to our fire leadership and get their input to share with the council on this.
I don't
So that we can make a good decision.
But your
Good
last
idea.
comment, did I understand you say that there was the potential for giving double credits if somebody served?
There are individuals who are serving on multiple municipal fire departments, yes.
But you wouldn't issue, if they're serving, period.
Yes.
They would not get a double credit.
They have to
would only
select
get their-
one or the other.
Well,
So
Is
they
that
would
your
select
understanding,
it,
Bill?
or the
You
municipality
would think they would
select
select it from the municipality that they live within.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Yeah, they can only get the credit from the municipality they
They live in
reside.
Franklin, we
Okay,
can't
okay.
send them the cash and say,
Yeah, it's just a matter of, and there's a limit to what that credit is.
Okay.
They can only get that much credit, period.
Yeah, I'm just offering it as a bit of a complex issue, a little more complex than on
Yeah.
the surface, and I'd like to get our leadership in the fire departments in place.
So
Well-
if our tax, because we have a tax company that does all of McCandless, does that tax company do all of those other municipalities too?
Yes.
They do, okay, all right, so that,
They collect for the North Hills.
for all of the
For all
North
of
Hills,
them.
for every, okay, every single one.
Plus, I think it'd be a good idea to have the input from the firemen.
Mhm.
I think that would make them more comfortable and more satisfied.
Yeah,
Since this could
exactly.
impact them,
We
yeah.
did- Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Thank you.
Exactly. One bit of good news that I've been passing on to you, we have been in discussions with descendants of Wilson McCandless, and we are working out the details of getting on long-term loan, a portrait of Judge McCandless and a portrait of the judge and his sister at a young age, along with some other books and historic items owned by the judge. And so we'll be working those details out in terms of the shipping, and I believe the Heritage Center, and
They would be placed in the
they'll be
Heritage
placed
Center,
in the
right.
Heritage Center, and we'll do something special to make that announcement when they're received. The last thing, just making, I guess for the record, letting everybody know that we did receive a petition from a couple of hundred residents asking the town's assistance in preserving parcel of property on Pine Creek Road at Minard for a purpose of green space for community use and stormwater protection. You all received a copy this evening, and that completes my report.
Wait a second, let me ask you, is this, Atria's McCandless at your 1A, is that the one that sold for 25 million?
No, that was the other
Anthology,
anthology, which was.
Was that the blue one?
28
Stonecrest.
million.
28 million?
Yes.
Is that the blue building?
It's the
on
one-
It's the
McKnight?
one right up against McKnight.
Yeah, the blue, sort of blue.
With the stone.
It's,
Yeah. Okay.
May I ask a question of council? As we get into this and make our decisions as to what we decide we're doing, would it be a good idea for Bob to bring us some ideas things that happened in North Fayette that he was involved in, that he could present to us and we could discuss them, and, you know, from that, maybe select some ideas, that we hadn't thought about, that since he's already gone through it, that he might bring us the ideas that we could possibly involve in McCandless.
Are you talking about something specific?
Well, recreation, that type thing that he's you know, and I'm looking here, and I'm thinking about what these people are saying, that they would like it for some recreation use with the citizens of McCandless, and, you know, it's quite a large piece of property, and I thought, well, Bob's gone through quite a bit of this in North Fayette, in this, talking to him, you know, I've heard him say these things, and I thought, well, why not bring some of those ideas to council, and we could just kind of like knock them around and discuss them, and, I mean, maybe we'll throw them out and say, no, that's not for us, or maybe that's a good idea, and we might be interested in looking into it.
Am I wrong in thinking this property's been purchased by a development company?
It has been, but
You're right. And
they're having some
honestly,
issues with getting
I think the
a
issue.
plan that will
Yeah,
work.
I mean, honestly, I think their issue is they're concerned with the flooding along Pine Creek, and they
Right.
just wanna make sure that council's sensitive to that, and anything that occurs to any of that land along the Pine Creek watershed.
No, I
We
get
have
that.
plans
I'm
to
just
send it to
asking, they're talking about trying to make this a green space. Is this development company shown any interest in selling it?
No,
they
there
have-
haven't been any discussions or anything like that.
How many acres is involved
From
in
this
this program?
council, so.
Well, I just wonder,
Yeah,
is it 23 or something?
I was gonna say
It
around
went
the
before the,
20-something.
yeah, it went before the zoning hearing board, and they granted the developer a variance, but then the citizens had it shot down by Judge James at the Common Pleas Court. And so, I guess they're, I wonder if the developer really owns this, or only took it under contract, subject to it being able to
What
rezone.
was the variance for? They wanted a variance for what?
They wanted a variance so they could, you know, fit more setback variance. They wanted variances to try to place more properties on it.
Homes or residential buildings, I assume?
Yeah, right.
Right, this is the ones they were talking about, putting them right up on the road.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, yeah.
So, Madam President, may I ask a question of the manager?
Sure,
Just a quick one, Paul.
it's gonna be a long one.
How do we, Northern Heritage Center, talking about these additional artifacts and things, how do we protect, ensure these
We'll-
types of things when we
We'll
add
do our
to
best to have them
the,
valued
okay,
by those people
okay.
that
That was the
know-
only flag that went
know
up
the
when I read
historic
this. I thought,
value of
let's-
those things, and we'll add that to our overall
Okay,
coverage.
good, okay, thank you for that. All right.
So what is council's idea as far as Bob maybe bringing us some ideas to knock around a little bit?
Bob
I
can
would
always
hope- I
give
would
us
hope that
ideas.
We wouldn't have to officially ask him
Right.
to do
Yeah,
that.
please,
I
yeah.
Right, if
expect
he
him to
has
tell
a-
us what he thinks all the
Anytime.
time.
Well,
I think so, too.
well, but again, I just like pass it through
I'm
council.
I'm never gonna be shy about bringing up ideas. I guess my question to that was if the town, whether it's this property or another piece of property that we would want to try to utilize or maintain.
Mhm.
You know, when you're talking about recreation, it can be active recreation such as ball fields, basketball courts, things like that, passive recreation, trails, that type of thing. It could be just conservation land. You know, in my past life, we've done them both. We've acquired 30, 40 acres for conservation purposes, with the idea it would just be trails going through it. And ultimately lead to connectivity amongst our different recreation areas. So I can bring any or all of those types of things back. It could be programming
Well, that's the point
things.
I'm making.
You know, my general comment is going to be if we start to look at things like programming, that we would do it in such a way that any programming that would be done out of the town itself would be self-sufficient. Whether it's a yoga class, whether it's whatever that may not be offered, they become self-sufficient. You know, we can structure things to pay for themselves.
Put a
and that
chicken
would-
farm there.
Or a chicken farm. Yeah, so I mean, there's a number of different things that can be, or a combination of things that can be done. And if you think that you're ready to hear them, I'll be more than happy to give you some thoughts. And you know, I'll say this: anybody who wants to take a tour, we can take you over to the West Hills and show you what we did.
Okay, thank you.
That completes my report.
Okay, any citizen?
Well,
No, wait, I
Amy's
was
here.
just gonna
Amy
say.
came.
Oh,
She's
okay,
here.
she slipped in,
We
okay.
came to you earlier, and since you weren't here, we pushed you to the end.
Appreciate that. We were at Ross Township at their meeting and they send their regards.
Okay, are we ready for her now?
We're ready.
Okay, Amy? And Bob, I'm sorry, excuse me.
Okay, I'm Amy Steele, I'm the director of Northland Public Library, and here to answer any questions you have about our 2020 budget, and to give a brief summary, but I thought I'd start off by sharing with you what we've been doing since I was here last. And to sum that up, I'm going to use one big word, and that's construction. So we've had a lot of construction projects going on. The most exciting one, at least for me, is our Learning Garden, and I know I saw a number of you at our ribbon cutting event. So we have mostly completed our construction on the garden. We still have a large tree that's going to be planted here in the next couple of weeks. We're waiting for the nursery and the landscaper to say it's a safe time and good time to dig that tree up and move it in. And as I promised your president here, that I will be completing our form for the trees planted in the garden so that you will have those all counted. But I'm waiting until that last one gets done this year. And we may have another one or two next year. But the garden is primarily a programming space. We are kind of out of space in the building, so this is an extension of space we can use. It also is a sensory garden, and we've already gotten a lot of good feedback on the sensory elements in the garden. And in addition to our formal programming we'll be doing, we have what we're calling independent discovery and exploration time. So we have times when we have volunteers out there and folks of all ages can come out and they can read. We also have some specialty gardens that the kids can check out a kit. We have a fairy garden, a dinosaur garden, and a futuristic garden. So they can check out these little kits that are full of fairies and dinosaurs and astronauts and robots, and they can interact in the garden that way. So we're hoping to get about another week or so, as long as the weather holds, use out of it. We might do a winter program or two, but then we'll be kind of closing things down until the spring, and then we'll have a full schedule of programming going on in the spring for the garden. And we're very proud of that because our Northland Public Library Foundation raised all of the money that we used to construct that garden, so it was completely paid for out of our donations that we received, and through a lot of partnerships and in-kind donations as well. And then our other construction projects, as I know we talked to you about before, is our HVAC system, that we are completely replacing that traditional system with an energy-efficient VRF system. That project is about 3/4 of the way complete. It's taking a number of weeks because we have not and do not intend to close the library at all while that project is going on. So our contractors have been very good about working some off hours and setting things up, and patrons and staff have been very patient as they've had to navigate around some ladders in some areas while the guys have been working. We're also replacing the roof at the same time, and those two contractors have been coordinating very well. We're adding insulation with the roof and hoping to put an end to the leaks that we've been having in the roof. And they will also then be replacing our skylights as well, and that'll be the last portion. And we hope to have everything finished up in early December, although the skylights could possibly be put off until the spring, just depends on how quickly the weather turns. But we did bring in over $700,000 in external grant money to fund those projects, so we are able to complete those without any needed financing, coupling the grant money with our some capital savings that we had. So that will kind of wrap up the construction, at least for this year. I'm sure there are more things on the docket to come up, but we're excited to see a drop in energy usage come next year with this new system and the new insulation on the roof. We also hope the building will just be more comfortable. We've had pockets in the building that did not receive adequate heating and cooling or too much heating and cooling, so this new system will give us a lot better control over that and also increase the flow of fresh air and just provide a better air quality in the building. A couple other things I was going to share just very quickly is we're finally seeing some bearing fruits from some of our advocacy efforts. We have heard that the Port Authority is going to be bringing back the bus line that used to service the library. We had testified at their meetings for the last couple of years, and I've been told by Catherine Kellerman, the CEO of the Port Authority, that they hope to reestablish that service in March of next year. So that will continue on up from Westview, up Perry Highway, stop at CCAC North, and then have a stop at Northland. So we're very excited to have our bus back. And then on the funding side of advocacy, we are finally seeing an increase in funding for next year from the state. Back in 2008, 2009, there was a series of cuts to public library funding at the state level. We lost about 38% of our funding, and since then, from the state, it's been flat funded. So this is the first increase we've seen since that. We're very excited about it. We do hope that it's a trend that will continue, so we're not going to rest on our laurels, because even with this 9% increase from the state, we will still be funded less than we were in 2008 as public libraries. So we continue to fight those fights to eke out what we can. We expect next year to see about a 3% increase from RAD. They have approved that in their preliminary budget, but they don't issue their final budget for about a month yet. We are projecting an increase in funding from table gaming, which had been flat for a few years, and this year we've started to see an uptick in those funds. So we did go ahead and budget an increase. We expect that to continue next year, and that all bodes well, because the more increases we get from those other pots of money, then we don't have to ask for quite as much of an increase from our municipalities, who by far are our biggest supporters, and we do appreciate that. On the expense side, nothing really too new and different. Salaries remain our biggest challenge, trying to stay competitive and reduce turnover and attract qualified staff. We are working on a new compensation structure for our staff, and this is because the Allegheny County Library Association contracted to do a wage and benefits study for libraries in Allegheny County. So we have current local industry data for salaries, so we are working on that. And we also use the Bear Center for Nonprofit Research. They do an annual wage and benefits study as well for some of our positions that are, non-library specific, like marketing and accounting, our maintenance staff. So we use that as well to guide for our salary structure. As always, healthcare is a challenge. We're increasing next year the percentage of the premium that our staff have to pay to participate, in our health care plan in order to be able to keep up with those increases. Another increase that you may see that on the budget documents that maybe looked a little out of line is for our professional services. And that's because for many, many years we were very, very lucky and had our legal services, our solicitor, donate their time. So that was a local professional for many years, and a series of a couple of them. We weren't able to continue that, so now we are paying for those legal services and our solicitors. So there's a little bit of a sticker shock for us after so many years of being lucky, not having to pay so much for that. So most of the other lines are just, increases in our vendors' prices. We have to continue our collection. We have a state standard we have to meet, and that's 12% of our operating budget must go to our collection, because after all, we are a library. So as those other numbers increase, we do have to have an corresponding increase in our collections. So most everything else is pretty much being held as level as possible. So we'll be happy to answer questions that you might have about the budget.
Amy, I did attend that, as you mentioned, a number with a lot of other people. I thought the bricks really looked nice, and I'm encouraging people that I know to do bricks. Some people, Jack Murtaugh, to name, he must have about 6 or 7 bricks at least And being Irish heritage, he's got these little Irish language messages.
Right, so what
On
Councilman
each
McKim
brick.
is talking about is our pavers in the Learning Garden, and there is an opportunity to have them engraved as part of our fundraiser to offset the cost, and we are still accepting orders for those, so we can always continue to add some additional pavers.
I just wondered, did you say, Amy, that the Pat Bus is gonna run on 19?
That's what I was told. I was in a public meeting, and I heard the CEO of the Port Authority, Catherine Kellerman, say that she thought March of next year is when they do their new route extensions, that would go through. And I also heard Lindsey Williams echo that thought as well. So I believe, I don't know any details,
okay.
but she did say it would, to quote what I heard in that meeting, she said it will go up to CCAC North and that library I keep hearing all about, so. And I did speak with her afterwards, and she did confirm it would come up Perry Highway from Westview, where the end of the line is now in Westview. It would continue on up Perry Highway, at least as far as Cumberland Road. Now, where it goes and how often it stops, I don't have those details yet. I haven't seen anything published on it, but
Okay.
we, a number of people from this council worked with us a couple of years ago on a campaign, Buses for Perry Highway, along with some folks from Ross Township, and we're pretty excited to hear that that's finally going to happen.
For a long
Yes.
time.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Question?
Yes?
It looks, when I look at the programming and I think about the Learning Garden, I don't see a bump in the budget for additional programming to support that. But it looks like you didn't realize all of your programming expenses in 2019 maybe?
We're not,
Are you
we're not quite done.
I just want to make sure we're funding the program
use for the
potential that we
garden.
have there. Yes.
Some of that, we may be looking back to our foundation to help with some of
Okay,
that.
okay.
We only have so many staff members and staff hours, so a lot of the programming that's done in the garden will be, programming that we, because of the weather too, we have to be able to do either place or have a rain date for it, but we have included in our budget for the construction, we purchased a lot of things that we were going to be able to use. We had a gift card drive, and we've saved back some of those gift cards for some of our local nurseries and things to be able to buy the things that we'll need to support some of the garden-related programming out there. But
The only other comment I have, and is that the utilities, it looks like you're reducing your utility cost by 20. But Bob, is this realistic?
That's what we're
Believe
sort
you
of
can
hoping
achieve?
for that. That might be a little bit more than that. We don't want to be too aggressive on it. The new system, is partially in operation at this point, and it's amazing how little those machines run compared to the other machines. And the nice thing about them is they're continuously variable from like a 0% to 100%. Whereas our old system was either 0 or 100%.
On or off.
When it went on, it was on all the way. With the new system, it can ramp up, it can ramp down. It's gonna be a lot more efficient. And as Amy mentioned, we also put the additional installation on the roof.
Yes.
So we hope that the two of those things, we're gonna save about 20%.
And we're gonna
Very
have
nice.
an exchange as well, so we can take heated air from one part of the
Right.
building and use it at another part where it's needed,
That's
so.
Yeah, the new rooftop, will be able to capture either hot or cold air as it escapes and transfer that heat or cooling, depending on what the building's calling for, back into the building without, rather than sending it out and then recooling or reheating new air.
That's great.
Yeah, so it's all gonna be-
You've got economizer cycles. That's
Yeah,
wonderful.
yeah, it's gonna be-
Great,
Yes.
great. This
We're really
looks
looking
great.
forward
Okay. Anything else?
Well, I just have one question. I just happened to catch my eye. Under depreciation, sort of an esoteric subject, there's a change in depreciation from 2019 this year to I guess, a requested or projected 175, so $35,000 difference there. That's on,
Oh, yeah, that's because of the new projects.
that's what I
Yeah.
figured, but what accounts for the 2016, 314,000, and then the next year? That seemed like an odd number. I just wondered where that number came from.
We did a complete review of our depreciation schedule with our auditor this past year. Bob has only been on the staff for a couple of years, so we decided we needed to take a look at that, and we found that there were actually items that were still listed on that we no longer had and didn't need and weren't going to replace. And so we cleaned all of that up. The other thing that accounts for a big difference there is our collection used to be included on our depreciation schedule.
Okay.
And some libraries include it there and some do not. And the reason we have now removed it is because we are constantly replenishing our collection every year. As I just mentioned, that we have to spend 12% of our annual budget on our collection. So it didn't make sense that we needed to be setting money aside so that maybe 20 years from now we replace the whole collection all at once. So we're doing that constantly as an ongoing expense. So we have actually removed the collection off of our depreciation schedule, which actually helped, especially on a year like this when we have so many big capital projects that are going back onto that schedule.
Right, so that's why it dropped down, and then next year we're projecting it to go back up.
Because of the new projects.
About $1.1 million worth of capital improvements on the books this year, so we'll have to add that depreciation. That's what I can say.
Any other questions for Amy?
Thank you for coming in and involved. We appreciate it. Thanks for the time.
This is the time for any citizen comment on any.
Oh,
Oh, sorry. Do you have anything you can talk about that's not confidential?
I was just gonna say, save everything for executive session.
Citizen comment on any agenda items? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Turn to executive.